wish to thank the grace of heaven and the virtue of our predecessors and the masters that I have this opportunity to be able to present this class. The class is just a continuation of the Answers to the Truth, okay? And we're on like number 56, topic number 56 already. So anyway, I mean, for those who haven't followed along, this basically is just a book of questions and answers that's conducted, well, the class is conducted by Holy Teacher, and he basically presented some, there's 4 parts to it. There's 4 parts? Yeah, right, there's 4 parts. And it talks about the heritage, the Tao, and there's a questions and answers part, which is where we are on, and then the practice, etc. Okay, so anyway, the idea is just to give us an idea of how, what the Tao is in a way, and also how we can, I guess you could conduct ourselves, practice the Tao, etc. Okay, so anyway, in this part on the questions and answers, he's basically answering some questions about, that people would pose to the, about the Tao. So we're right now on number 56, or one of the a portion of the answer and question session. Okay, so here he's talking about that when a person, in his life, in his youth, basically doesn't practice the Tao, or doesn't even know about Tao, but rather basically, like he says here, sins, or has many faults, etc. But in his old age, when he becomes, I guess, more knowledgeable or whatever, that he comes in his old age, that can he still be able to attain the Tao? Okay, so you can read it. Well, we'll just read it. I'll just read it quickly. Okay, the sea of suffering has no shore except for those who repent. If a person sins when he is young but repents in his old age, he can attain the Tao as long as he vows to practice Tao, discards all wrongs and do rights, changes all sinful thoughts to kind thoughts, becomes a vegetarian, receive Tian Tao from a enlightened teacher with Tian Ming. Actually, this applies to all regardless of age. This is why there's a saying, the moment one discovers his true self, so he puts down the butcher knife and sins no more. He immediately echoes the heart of a Buddha. This is verified by the case of Han Wen-gong, who happens to be a person, a minister. I think he's a minister in the Tang Dynasty. Was it in the Tang Dynasty? Yeah, I believe in the Tang Dynasty, where he persecuted a lot of Buddhist monks, etc. But later on, he realized that what he did was wrong, so therefore he sort of like repent in his old age. Okay, so what is this question talking about? Basically, it's just saying that if a person who has not encountered Tao, or even when he has encountered Tao, but he doesn't really practice it or follows it, that he may have done some wrongs. Okay, let's put it that way. Okay, but then later on in his life, he, I guess, either regrets it or finds that he has been not not good, that he can still change his ways and still be able to attain Tao. Okay, so now here he specifically Holy Teacher talks about the fact that he goes, okay, discards all wrongs and do rights, changes all sinful thoughts to kind thoughts, and then he adds, become a vegetarian and receive the Tian Tao. Okay, so what does that really come down to? Okay, if you live a normal human life, okay, then yes, you will go through the ups and downs of life, especially since if you haven't received the Tian Tao, okay, and because we are human, so to speak, then our life, if you will, is very human in the sense that we do commit rights and wrongs. Okay, so, and there will be times that which we regret it, of course, but the point is that we still commit those things. Okay, and then here also says about talking about being a vegetarian. Being a vegetarian just means the fact that when one acknowledges the fact that our willingness to kill to satisfy our taste, then one realizes the fact that, yeah, okay, perhaps that it shouldn't be that case. And so therefore, by becoming a vegetarian, we can essentially try to affect our karmic future. Okay, and then the final part is about receiving a 10,000 from enlightened master or Tian Ming. Okay, that just means the fact that, yes, we have the ability to transcend the cycle of life and death. Okay, so it just basically boils down to the fact that, yeah, if you're a person who has many wrongs, etc., okay, whether you receive the 10,000 or not, you can still change. And once you do change, then yes, you are still able to attain the Tao. However, there's a caveat on here. However, it's just to say that the karma that you've generated in this life while you were committing, good and bad, let's put it that way, okay, must still be accounted for. Let's put it that way. Must still be accounted for. So therefore, you must still, however, go through, if you will, resolving those karmas. Okay, let's just put it that way. Okay. So anyway, is there any questions on this? This is pretty simple. This any questions? No. Okay.
So it doesn't mean that you know about the Tao early on, but then you say, I'm not going to wait until I'm like
well,
very old.
yeah, okay, yeah. Well, yeah, this doesn't really talk about that because it just says, oh, okay, receive the 10,000 and the line master at the end. Okay. Yeah, suppose you do have heard about it before, but then you say, nah, it's no big, it's not something that you want, so therefore you put it off or whatever, or you may not even encounter it again. Well, there's two ways of looking at it. One way is the fact that you really don't want to learn about it. The other way is the fact that, yeah, you hear about it, but you're not really interested in it at that point. Okay, so in that sense, Buddhism has a saying. Let's put it that way. Buddhism has a saying. Buddhism says that you can encounter the Tao. I mean, you can achieve enlightenment in a lifetime, in an instant, or you can achieve it through 1,000 lifetimes. Okay, so basically, just saying that it's true that each of us are at different stages of that lifetime. Okay, meaning the fact that it's possible you could have cultivated many years before, many lifetimes before, and that, yeah, in this particular lifetime, you are, I guess you could say, you are qualified, if you will, to achieve that enlightenment. Let's put it that way. Then for others, you're just still in the process of cultivating. So therefore, in that sense, whether you will accept something or not, the truth or not, it's hard to say. Okay, so you may say, it's no big, it's not something that I'm interested in. That's true in this particular lifetime or in this particular moment. But eventually, as you cultivate, yes, then you will gradually create I guess you could say, a foundation in which that you will be able to eventually achieve. Okay, so for the person who is not interested in it, okay, he hears about it at the beginning, then not interested, that's fine, okay, because if he should eventually, whether it's in this lifetime or not, like you say, we say reverse course, let's put it that way, if he was happening to be doing not so good things, then yes, he can still achieve this enlightenment. The problem is, of course, that it just takes longer. That's all. Okay, so I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah.
He's created more karma.
Yeah, he just created more karma, that's all. Because eventually your karma has to be resolved, that's all. Eventually your karma has to be resolved, okay? But you just putting off, if you will, the I guess you could say putting off the resolving of those karmas, that's all. Okay, so, you know, because I remember in Lecture Liu in his class, he talks about the fact that, oh, okay, he says, okay, does anybody want to become a Buddha? Everybody says, oh, yeah, sure. You know, we all want to become a Buddha. Okay, well, why aren't you trying to become a Buddha? He goes, wait a minute, well, we're trying, we're learning stuff and all that stuff. But yet, we are still so much influenced by our, what we call the three hearts and minds. The three minds, three hearts and minds, as well as the what? The four forms. I guess you could say forms. Okay, four. Yeah, in Chinese we call it 三心四相, right? Okay, so therefore, because we are so much influenced by that, okay, it's hard for us to constantly be aware that you should be what, cultivating or trying to become a Buddha. Okay, the reason why is because we exist in this world, right? But this existence is nothing more than what, as how the Buddha would say it, a phenomena. This exists. So for us, it is reality. It is reality, right? Because we see, oh yeah, it's real. It's real, you know, whatever. But yet, from a perspective of Buddha, it's nothing more than a phenomena. So therefore, you know, how we define reality is based on, yeah, what we can see based on our senses, right? Because if you if you think about what the lectures that there's a doctor in neuroscience about it's David Eagleton, I think. He talks about the fact that technically speaking, your reality is nothing but created through your mind. Because if you think about it, your mind is what? It's encased in a skull, okay, and it's dark, you know, because there's no light that goes through. It's dark, but yet it can sense this reality by what he calls the peripheral senses, meaning the fact that we have our eyes, we have our ears, etc., etc., etc. But yet, as far as the brain's concerned, it's just an input from some sense. That's all. It's just an input. So as far as it knows, it's just an electrical signal coming from, let's say, your eyes, for example, that reaches your brain. And it basically says, oh, okay, this signal is telling me certain things, so therefore, this is what I see. This signal what I hear, and this is what I hear. Okay, so, but as far as the brain's concerned, it really doesn't know. It doesn't know what's out there. It really doesn't know. It's interesting. It really doesn't know what's out there. So in other words, the reality that we perceive, okay, through our senses, is nothing more than what inputs our brain gets. So it's kind of interesting. So anyway, the point, what I'm trying to get at is that fact that, because we see things, okay, so therefore we think that this is real, okay, because it's based on what our senses are telling us, okay. However, if you dig deeper into that, you realize that the signals coming from the senses are nothing more than just, we call it electrical input. Well, they call it electrical inputs that happen in our brain, and that from those senses, we perceive a reality. So, is that reality real? Is that real? Well, it depends on your sense of reality. Okay, but the point is that, okay, so if you were to take a brain, let's say we have the ability to take a brain out of a body, for example. And then we feed it with these inputs, okay? Whether it's, I don't know, you could say electrical signals, okay? You don't actually have to have an eye. All you do is feed electrical signals to the portion of the brain that senses vision or hearing, etc. Okay. Without the eyes, without ears, without the mouth, whatever, you can send signals to the brain. And if the brain can, if that's the case, then he's speculating, of course. He's saying, well, then in that case, you can create a reality for that brain. Right? Because as far as the brain's concerned, it's just, because let's face it, our eyes, everything senses are just nothing but inputting electrical signals to the brain. So therefore, if you don't use those, let's say you don't use an eye, but you just send signals, okay, etc., in the ears, whatever, then the brain will still perceive a reality, even though you can say, oh, there's no reality, I'm just sending signals. See? Well, this is what he's speculating, because he's a neuroscience researcher. So he researches, how is it that the brain functions in terms of how it perceives reality, So, but anyway, this is a very interesting, thought experiment that he's going through. But the point is that, yeah, you can create realities, different realities for your brain. Because as far as the brain's concerned, there's no difference. There's no difference. So it's very interesting. But, he never got that far. He obviously can't take a brain out and try to experiment on it. But the point is that this is a very good question that he asks, So what is reality then? What is reality? So, but anyway, I'm getting ahead, I'm getting distracted here. Okay, so here's the question is just trying to say is that, yeah, when you're young, when you haven't received the Tao and all that stuff, that's fine. But when you do receive the Tao, realize the fact that you need to transform yourself, then you should make an effort to transform yourself. Okay. So yes, it just means that there is hope. There's hope. So long you're able to look back, I guess you can start reflect, okay, to transform yourself, then yes, then you can have a chance to attain Tao. Okay. Now, on the opposite side of that, the other question comes down to this. Can a lifelong vegetarian, okay, who already made a vow, etc., who has done many good deeds but violates his vows and turns back from vegetarianism in his old age, still attain Tao? Okay, so this is talking about right now a case where you have a person who already has made a vow to transform himself, to do good, etc. Okay, but then later on, gives up on it, so to speak. Okay, gives up on it. So can that person still attain the Tao? The answer came down to this type of person have good foundation, but they lack firm commitment to their vows. Since they lack wisdom and vision for the truth, they stray away from the enlightened teacher with Tianming. Okay? That is why their hearts become reversed and they abandon accumulated merits. As their emotions and desires take over their minds, their merits start to erode until totally depleted. And eventually they will stay in the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. They cannot attain the Tao. Okay, so this, in a way, is actually it can be very serious. Okay, it just means this: that when you do make a vow, okay, in this case to be a vegetarian, you need to make sure. Well, you try to make sure that it is for your life. Okay, in other words, you don't go back on it. Okay, go back on it. Okay, it just means that because when you do go back on it, okay, you start accumulating the karmic aspects of not being a vegetarian. Okay, and as you begin to accumulate that, then you also may be more lax in your cultivation, etc. Okay, and so therefore, over time, you will eventually basically become a normal person, like a normal person. Okay, now generally you would say, oh, okay, well, that shouldn't be so bad. A person who just received the Tao but doesn't cultivate, let's say, it's no different, right? It's no different. The problem is the fact that you've already made a vow to the Buddha and saints, okay, to God, if you will. And so when you go back on it, so to speak, in a way, you are saying, okay, it's not a big deal. I'm just going to go back to my normal life, so to speak. Okay, if that's the case, then yeah, you do really become like a normal person in a way, in the sense that you go back to your normal ways. Okay, and by going back to your normal ways, essentially you are rejecting, if you will, the idea of, oh yeah, I still can transcend the cycle of life and death. And so by rejecting that, in a way, that's why they say you cannot attain the Tao. Any questions on that?
Attaining Tao means to transcend.
Yeah, transcend, right. I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that like you can't attain the Tao forever?
Well, no, only in this life. In this life. In this life.
Okay.
In this life.
So is going back on like start eating meat even after receiving the Tao, is that worse than not receiving the Tao?
Well, no. Okay. This only applies to if, let's say you have received the Tao, but you haven't made any vegetarian vows. Okay. If that's the case, then no, it doesn't apply because you have not made a vow. But once you've made a vow to be a vegetarian, let's say, okay, then when you go back on it, then yes, you will eventually, I guess you could say you're rejecting, if you will, the attainment of the Tao. Okay, but only in this life. Only this life. Okay, because it doesn't mean that because after all, when you go back, you just receive the Tao, but you just lax about cultivating or whatever, not doing any cultivating, let's say, okay, then you essentially all you have done is just build up karma. That's all. Okay, the karma that you build up, okay, will still eventually have to be resolved in your next life. Okay, see, with the Tao, it's basically just to say that you have a chance, a potential, to transcend this cycle of life and death. Technically, you have a potential to become a Buddha. Okay, it's just that how much are you willing to work on that to become enlightened like the Buddha? Okay, so if you are very diligent like the Buddha, okay, who basically, how he, as you can see by how he cultivates, etc., then in that case, you do have a potential to achieve this enlightenment in this lifetime, because he achieved it in his last lifetime, because of course he had reincarnated so many times, etc. Okay, so, but if you are like Lecture Liu says, oh, okay, we're still very very lax in our cultivation. Lax in our cultivation just means the fact that, okay, yeah, we still are very much influenced by this 三心四相, this 3 hearts and minds and 4 forms. Okay, then yeah, because we're so influenced by that, because we think of it as reality, it does make us less diligent or aware in terms of our cultivation. Okay, but it doesn't mean the fact that we're not still trying. That's true, we're all still trying. It's just the fact that, yeah, sometimes we still go through our ups and downs, let's put it that way. Okay, we still go through ups and downs. But to answer your question, if you have just received the Tao, but you have made a vow to be vegetarian, then yes, you need to try to maintain that for your lifetime. If you have not made a vow, okay, then there's no issue here, so to speak. Okay, it just means that, yeah, you're still accumulating karma. That's all. Because the purpose of the vow is this. To be a vegetarian vow, make a vegetarian vow, is just to say that, yeah, you will essentially break the karmic link, okay, that prevents you from creating more karmic debt. More karmic debt, okay? Because, there's sometimes people get the misunderstanding the fact that, if you become vegetarian vow, your karmic debt is resolved. No, your karma is still there. Okay, whatever you've done in the past is still there. Okay, but you're not creating more new ones. Okay, and so when you're not creating more new ones, if you will, it does gives you more, I guess you could say, perhaps peace of mind, if you will, and call it that. Okay, or the fact that you have less karmic debt to deal with. Okay, and in that sense, it can help us in our cultivation. Okay, it makes it easier for us to cultivate. Okay. Yeah, sure.
And it may seem like a very simple question, but in all reality, between the classes that we have here and the outside world that we deal with, who are we really supposed to be cultivating?
Who are we supposed to cultivate?
Yeah, I mean, friends, family.
Oh no, you're supposed to be cultivating
enemies,
yourself.
Just focusing on self, or
No, it's self and others. But
self and
you
others.
start.
You start
I mean,
with yourself.
It depends on the situation. I mean, on the
Hey,
condition.
how do I
Everybody's condition is
deal?
different. But it starts, with
Oh,
yourself
okay.
first. You have to have this little
Okay.
motivation or eagerness to want to learn and want to ultimately achieve enlightenment. But then, in that process, when you are learning and practicing, you also want to help others. Now, so who others? Who are the others? It depends. It could be your relatives. It could be your close friends. Suppose you don't have relatives, so so it depends. You know what I'm trying to say? People, in short, to make it more generic, is people that you have affinity with.
Right.
Some type of relationship.
Yeah, affinity, relationship that you could get along with. I mean, obviously, it's hard to talk about it to total strangers that you have no relationship with. I mean, it's not easy. I mean, I'm not saying that's impossible, but it's not easy, right? Because you never met them before, right? You don't know what their background is. You don't know if they're quote unquote good or bad or whatever. Doesn't matter, right? Doesn't matter. But at least if you have some kind of relationship with, relatives, friends, classmates, co-workers, neighbors, etc., right? I mean, you start small. You start in a circle, right? With, like say you have a relationship with, affinity with, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's not to say that you can't spread it to strangers. I mean, you can.
Well, what is the expectation of this temple with the people who come to the classes? Should, and Johnny, I understand, and I just so I get it better, because the stuff I deal with. So I just want to, just have a little more clarity and understanding as far as dealing with the role and responsibility of your students.
Okay. Oh, go ahead.
See, first lecture, I actually said it before. The thing is that we are supposed to be an example first. If we're not doing the right thing, it's very difficult to get someone else to do something. So cultivate ourselves first and showing what the cultivation is doing for us. Alright, then this way when we speak to someone, they'll be able to look at us and see, well, okay, I understand. But if we're not cultivating ourselves, then it's very difficult for us to tell someone else or introduce someone else.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So cultivation doesn't stop or start at the temple. It's all the time. The temple is just a place for you to
Organize our thoughts and get clarity on
But
what
once
it is
you're outside the
that
temple,
we
you can still continue to
and
cultivate.
to cultivate and try to
Right.
Well,
I mean,
bring goodness into the reality of the situation.
It's cultivation is not just at the temple. I
Yeah.
agree. It's all the time, okay?
Okay.
But there are different types of cultivation or different scopes, okay, or areas, right? The reason why it's also important to come to the temple is to, you have to learn the precepts. I mean, you have to learn how to make the bows, right? I mean, because it's hard to do that, or we kind of become very casual about it. If we don't come to the temple, it's highly, I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to be doing bowing, right? What, you bow to a wall? You bow to a window? Of course not, right? So highly unlikely. So that's why we have to remember, that there's such thing as precepts or rules and regulations, et cetera, proprieties, that type of thing. And also, for a lot of people, and I encountered this in a lot of out-of-state people, I see them maybe once a year, they just attend Dharma class and that's it. So I asked them, do any of you remember what the 3 treasures are? Duh.
Yeah.
What is that? So the only way to review or refresh 3 treasures, you have to come to a temple. You can't do it at home. You can't do it at school. You can't do it at a workplace, right? Isn't that true? Fact. So that's why that's the importance of the temple. Okay? So we should not abandon the temple or neglect the temple also. It's like our second home, if you will. All right. Okay. So there's a balance, but outside the temple, anytime, at home, at workplace, at school, etc., we still cultivate. We still have to be mindful, aware, etc., right? And also, the 4 awe-inspiring postures, all that. Okay?
Yeah, but we have a temple in our home as well.
Yeah, that's good too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the idea is the fact that when we're cultivating, we should really just always be aware. Okay, because if you ask, like what Lecture Kai talks about, the precepts and all that stuff. You see a temple, we do a lot of bows. We call them precepts. Whether it's bowing, whether it's doing saying hi or morning to the transmitters, etc. Or when we come in the morning, we do 禅师家, which is basically the saying the hello goodbye to the Buddhists and all that. Why do we do that? Actually, why do we do that? Okay. You could say, okay, oh sure, it's a ritual, you have to do it. But the true purpose of these bows or these precepts is nothing more than to make you be constantly aware of what the precepts stand for. Okay. And in the case of like the bowing, okay, why do we do bows? Okay, we say, okay, well, especially when those who have temples at home, why do we do morning and evening bows, incense? Why? Anybody have any idea why? Why do we do bows? Okay. The idea of doing bows is to gives us a routine, I guess you could say, be familiar with a routine. Okay. And the routine is not to say, oh, actually I bow. No. That's not the case. The routine is for you to understand that, in the 15 precepts, what's the first precept?
Respect all Buddhas.
Right. 尊敬先佛, meaning to respect and honor all Buddhas, right? Well, are those the Buddhas that you see on the altar? No. They're everybody. Because after all, what does the Buddha say? You're all Buddhas. Okay? It's just that you are not awakened to that fact that you are a Buddhas. So the idea is that when you 尊敬先佛, or respect and honor the Buddhas, or come to the temple to do the bows to the Buddhas, because you're basically honoring them and respecting them, it's really just to say you should be honoring what? Everyone. Okay, because it is also said that in the Tao, they say, hey, if you truly are enlightened and you talk like a Buddha, walk like a Buddha, quack like a Buddha, or whatever, okay, then in that case, whether you have rituals or not is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Okay, because you already know how to honor and respect everybody else. So there is no need for you to say, oh, okay, yeah, this is a statue of Buddha, so I gotta honor it. No. So the idea is really, if you can achieve that level of cultivation where you honor and respect all the Buddhas, then you're honoring and respecting everybody else. So when you greet someone, what do you say? Oh, yeah, say hi, or whatever. When you greet your parents, what do you say? Okay, or how do you conduct yourself, etc. So therefore, all these things are really nothing more than to what? Make us get used to the fact that, yeah, you need to honor, or to remind us, you need to honor the Buddhas. That's all. Okay, so and remember, there's 15 precepts, etc. But the point is that each one of them is nothing more than just try to remind you, hey, you need to what? Be constantly aware of how you should be conducting, saying things, etc. Even thinking. Okay, so you don't say things, if you're honoring the Buddhas, why would you say things that, to curse out somebody or whatever? Why? You wouldn't. See, so that's the whole idea of these precepts. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, if not, let me continue on. Okay, this one's a little bit easy. Well, it's not easy, but it's maybe a little bit abstract. Okay, can a person who lacks knowledge and wisdom improve knowledge and wisdom by practicing the Tao? Okay, here the translation is a little bit different from the original. Okay, the original Chinese really doesn't say that if one practices Kung Fu, which is basically just saying, oh, let's talk about yin and yang and all that stuff. No, actually, according to the Chinese the Chinese original text, it just basically says, if you make a lot of effort, that's what it means. Okay, because it really says here, it says, 好好用功. 好好用功, meaning what? To put a lot of effort into what you're doing. Okay, so that's what it says. Okay, it doesn't say if you practice Kung Fu diligent. Okay, if you basically 好好用功 or be diligent in your learning, okay, then one may seek knowledge and wisdom in tranquility. Ancient says, staying plain and simple, one affirms his will. Staying tranquil, one advances far. Okay, there's another saying. Tao is learned in tranquility. Knowledge is acquired through learning. So if one has no desire to learn, one has no knowledge. If one cannot remain tranquil, one cannot learn Tao successfully. Okay, this is basically related to what Lecturer Liu talks about when he talks about letting go, the concept of letting go. Okay, and I'll get to that in a second. Okay, this is why those who are arrogant cannot acquire the essence, and those who are impatient cannot reason. If a person stays tranquil and practicing Kung Fu, really just means if one is diligent in practicing. Okay, the wisdom he acquired will allow him to excel in both wisdom and virtues. This kind of wisdom is different from those gained from books and scriptures. Why? It's because once a person discovers his true self, he acts according to the Buddha nature and the truth. Okay, so again, it's just saying that in order for one to be able to absorb things quickly, okay, you let's put it this way: you hear about like how in school, okay, when you're learning something, right, doing homework or whatever, right? Why do we always go to the library? Well, most of the time, not all the time. Why do we always go to the library, by the way? Because what? It has tons of books over there, and so therefore, we think we can absorb all that knowledge. No, it's only useful when you begin to read those books. But if you don't read those books, why do you go to the library?
Back then, there was less distraction for me at the library. I was just able to read and concentrate.
Right. So, because a library is usually associated with what? A place that's peaceful and quiet, right? Because when you go to the library, you speak loudly. What do they say? Shh. Right? They tell you to be quiet. Okay. So in a way, a library is a place that is, quiet and tranquil. And why do you need this quiet and tranquil place to study? Why?
So we can absorb the knowledge.
Concentrate, focus.
Yeah, because you can focus. It makes it, let's put it that, it makes it easier I shouldn't say, because some people, when they study, they play their rock band music, and and they can still get away with it. For them, it's background noise. It's background noise. Okay, but the point is this: yeah, normally, I should say in general, yes, we do require a place that's quiet so that it allows us to be able to focus on what we're trying to study or what we're trying to learn. Let's put it. It doesn't have to be study, just what we're trying to learn. Okay. Now, for those who do have background music, or whatever, it's actually, believe it or not, it's psychologically, there's actually a reason for that. By the way, it's because of the fact that when we have background music, or doesn't have to be music, it could be anything else, background noise. Our mind has an ability, by the way, to tune things out, and so therefore, when you hear that, you tune it out, okay, and then it allows you to then try to focus on something, okay. So and psychologists say that because of the fact that there's a tendency for us to tune background noise out, okay. Because for example, if you're walking on the street, for example, right? You're walking on the street, right? Do you ask yourself, do you pay attention to the traffic noise that's going on? You should. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you should.
Get my car.
Yeah, right. Well, that usually occurs when you're only trying to cross traffic. Usually occurs, okay. But when you're not crossing traffic, you're just walking along the sidewalk. Think about it. How aware are you of the traffic that's going by? How aware are you? You may be slightly aware of it, that's true. Okay, because like say, when a person honks a horn, you look, okay, or when you hear screeching of a car, at the tires, you look. But beyond that, how much do you pay attention to the traffic? Yes, for some people you can say a lot. Yeah, that's true. Okay, but the point is that most people, it's tuned out because they're so used to it. Because when you get so familiar with some sounds or whatever, you will become so accustomed to it that you actually begin to tune it out. Even though you could say that, technically your brain is still hearing those sounds, whatever, but you're not paying attention to it. Okay, see, because when we can be aware of everything that's going on, and we are. Our brain is actually very aware of everything that's going on, but we are not paying attention to it. Okay, it's very much like saying how we say the subconscious and conscious. Okay, we talked about this actually some time ago. We say, okay, when you are driving, and you're just nonchalant driving, and all of a sudden you see something happening in front of you. Either you hit the brakes, you honk the horn, or you swerve, okay, because something is obstructing you. And we say, I say that, okay, you're not thinking about it. I mean, you're actually thinking about what you're doing, even though some people say, oh, no, you're not thinking, it's just instantaneous, right? Well, think about it. If you are driving, right, your brain is telling you, okay, this is what you do, etc. Okay, you put your foot on the accelerator, etc. And then when you see, event that happened, a dog jumps in front of you or whatever, it doesn't matter. You think, you immediately swerve or you hit the brakes or whatever, right? And you say to yourself, you're really not thinking about it. Well, actually you are, according to neuroscience. Because after all, in order for you to control your swerving or you're hitting the brakes or whatever, your brain still has to send signals to your muscles, right? It's the same pathway. What makes it, like you say, you're not thinking about, is the fact that the pathways or the way in which that your brain tells your muscles or whatever to move is so entrenched, because so I guess you could say it's like a highway, okay, where the signals go through. So that what happens is that you do it almost immediately, but you're just not aware of it. You're just not aware of it. That's all. Okay. So what it comes down to is this: is the fact that when we are trying to study, okay, the most important thing is trying to what? You need to be aware of what you're studying. Aware of what you're studying. Because if you don't do that, then it's very difficult for you to absorb something. Okay. And also to make it easier for us to focus or become aware of something, we do prefer a quiet place or a quiet mind, if you will, tranquil mind. That's why it talks about tranquil mind here. Okay, the fact that if your mind is peaceful and it makes you allows you to be able to absorb whatever you're studying or whatever, focus on. Okay, and if your mind is not tranquil, it's like saying a pond, the surface of a pond, when you throw a pebble on it. Okay, if you have a lot of perturbations or things that perturb you, okay, then your mind either has to tune that out or get distracted by it. Okay, so that's why having a tranquil mind or calming yourself down, or I don't know, just meditating or whatever before you study, okay, can help. Actually, it can help. And it allows your mind to absorb it much easier. Okay, so, if you, go ahead.
Just like when people say when the cup is full, it's hard. When we pour more water, it won't pour. So, as in when our mind is occupied with thoughts of it, then we cannot absorb.
Yeah, it makes it harder. It makes it harder for us to absorb. Like I said, the surface of a pond, when it is very perturbed, okay, etc., it does make it harder for you to be able to absorb the material that you're trying to study. That's all. Okay. So anyway, that's about that one. Okay. So any other questions? No? Okay. So let's continue. Okay. Should a practitioner of Tao be afraid of birth and death? Very, very important question here. Okay. What's the answer? Okay. As long as there's birth, there must be death. However, a practitioner of Tao should treat death as returning home. The day of birth for any life is the starting point of death in the future. Similarly, the day of death for any life is the starting point of birth in the future. The cycle of yin and yang, which represents death and birth, regenerates itself eternally. Even saints and Buddhas, even saints and sages cannot escape this cycle. Thus, a practitioner of Tao takes birth and death most seriously and most lightly. Okay, why? If a practitioner of Tao is not afraid of death, why should he practice Tao for the eternal life of his soul? If he is indeed afraid of death, why should he learn to take emotions, desires, and the death of a body lightly? Besides, by practicing Tao, one will eventually transcend the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. And so practitioner of Tao will not be concerned about the length of his life. Okay, there's a couple takeaways from here. It's true. Should we be afraid of death or birth? I mean, well, here it says, it doesn't really say here afraid, but well, it does. So like birth and death. Okay. Should we?
No.
Well, yes and no, actually. Okay, go ahead.
Death will come eventually for everybody.
Right.
The rebirth is the chance to clear up your karma. So if you're able to be born again, that means you have some karma that need to be reset. And death, like you said, it's a way to take us back home. And then if you were able not to come back again, that's good.
Okay, yeah.
Avoid samsara.
All right.
Well, two things I wanted to say. First of all, with the issue of rebirth, it doesn't say rebirth, it just says birth. So when we deal with birth, you have really no consciousness in the beginning. You know, you have like, you know, you're like being born, but you're not fully, you know, conscious of the language. You may have a little bit of understanding for what your parents have done from the time you was in the womb. But when you say like other animals, like a dog or a fish or a horse or something like that, you know, there's some natural instincts that we deal with, but we really don't, you know, I don't think the two really should be together. I think it should be death. Should we be afraid of death? And the birth part is really not, you know, it shouldn't really be a part of it. If you're going to say rebirth, then it could.
Well, what I say rebirth is really just means the fact that, yeah, it's the day of birth, the day of death, okay,
Death.
of any life is a starting point of birth in the future, okay. Well, first of all, yeah, it is true that when we come into this world, okay, we start out sort of like
Vanilla,
as a,
like sheep. Right?
you could say a blank sheet, but with luggage. Okay, with luggage. Okay, because of the fact that you still have all your karma associated with the past. Okay, it's just that you're not aware of those karma.
Yeah,
Okay.
consciousness is not-
David Eagleton, who is also the neuroscience that I happen to be watching, who's studying the neuroscience, okay, says this. He goes, you know, in our life, we think we make choices, right? In reality, he says, our choices are very, very limited. Very, very limited. Because he says, oh, it's based on the cultural upbringing, the learning, etc. of that person, which in a way dictates choice. That itself is true. Okay, that it's true. That's true. Okay. However, of course, he's only looking at the present case. You know, the way the brain develops. Okay. So, of course, in Bao we talk about what karma. Okay. Because yes, it is true that we don't know what our past karmas are. Okay. And so, in that sense, we can say, you know, well, we're not aware, let's put it that way, we're not aware of what our past karmas are, okay? Whether we know them or not, okay, it doesn't matter. The point is that we're not aware of it. And so therefore, those karmas essentially can have influence over our decisions and our lives. Okay, so in the case here, should a practice, the specific question is, should a practitioner be afraid of birth and death? Okay, and here it talks about yes and no. Okay, it's I don't want to say it's like it's both, but rather the fact that the practitioner is not afraid of birth and death in the sense that once you become, you know, you grow up, you become aware of what the Tao is, etc., the truth is, etc., and you begin to pursue that truth, then in that sense, you no longer are concerned about death or birth, because of the fact that through your cultivation, you can what? Achieve, well, eventually, hopefully enlightenment, but you can at least achieve some learning about this truth, in which that it can help you create the karma, if you will, that if you fail to, you know, achieve in this lifetime, create the karma to allow you to continue on in your next life. Okay, so that's why he actually doesn't actually answer the question about whether you should be afraid of birth and death, but rather it answers it by saying, will not be concerned about the length of his life. Okay, so in that sense, we all know that, like you say, we eventually go. Okay, we eventually go, right? The question is, of course, we don't know how long. For some, it's very early. For some, it's very late. Okay, so therefore we don't know how. All we have to be aware of is the fact that we have this life, that we should diligently cultivate it and leave everything else up to what fate, if you want to call it. Okay, because remember, if we are diligent in our cultivation, etc., our destiny also can what? Change. Right, exactly. Okay, so therefore, don't be too worried, if you will, about the fact that, oh, one day you will pass away. Yeah, the answer is yes, you will one day all go. It's just a question of when. Question of when, okay? And you shouldn't be too concerned about when. It's because of the fact that you should more be concerned about now. Now, okay? Because of the fact that if you can now cultivate, okay, then you don't have to be concerned about the when. If you do not cultivate all that, yeah, then you should be concerned because of the fact that when can arrive at any time. That's all. Okay. So yeah, in that sense, you shouldn't be afraid of life and death, but you should also just be concerned about the fact that you have this moment to cultivate. That's all. Okay. Any questions about this?
Also, it's like the future. Of course, we a normal human being would not know,
Oh, I know what you're getting at. It's true that for a normal person, their fate or their destiny is dictated by fate. In other words, because after all, it is dictated by very much by the karma of their past and the karma they generate.
So a lot of it we cannot control what's gonna happen, but we can control now for the things we want to do. So that's why the Buddha said we should seize our moments instead of thinking, oh, what should I do?
Well, the three Xing, yeah, the future, past, future, and present. Yeah. So yeah. When the Buddha talks about seizing the moments, yeah, it just means the fact that you must constantly be aware that you should be cultivating at every moment in your life. Okay. Now this cultivation can also change your destiny. Okay, but aside from that, the point is the fact that if you use this moment to just cultivate and just be concerned about cultivation, then fine. Let everything else will, if you will, take their place. Everything else will take their place. Okay. Anything else? No? Okay. Well, I was supposed to do this next one, but they told me time is up. Okay. The next one is sex exhausts the vitality. Why doesn't Tyndall prohibit sex? Okay. I guess we'll just go through the. Well, there's only 1, 2, 3. Okay, 3. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So we'll do the 3 topics next time. Okay. So if I've said anything wrong, I hope that the Buddhists and saints will correct me. And if there's anything. Yeah. So if there's if I've said anything wrong, I hope for the corrections, any corrections that you may have, and hopefully Buddhists and saints will forgive me. Thank you very much.